Good morning. I'm your host, Danielle Countryman, and welcome to the Transit Report, where the news is always on hand. As we approach the end of this great war, rumored to be the war to end all wars, we realize how difficult of a feat it truly has become to conjure up even the most minuscule amounts of hope when accustomed to living in a world in which gloom and sadness occupy your daily vocabulary. In order to combat these treacherous feelings, we've decided to welcome our new beginning with a segment we like to call What We've Innovated. We here at the Trans Report like to turn the other cheek and look at the brighter side of life, even in the darker periods. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our mobile anchor woman, Marie Frederick. Marie?
Thank you, Danielle. Salutations, and once again, thank you for tuning into the Trans Report. As stated before, my name is Marie Frederick, and I will be reporting a live segment of What We've Innovated.
The past few years of war have included many moments of death, despair, and an overwhelming sense of loss. However, there comes a time when you must acknowledge the gains and advances we have ultimately inherited from these negative moments in order to assess their true potential. Today, we will be providing an overview of a well-known, on-the-ground war tactic, chemical warfare. On the morning of April 22, 1915, Fritz Haber, accompanied by Axis soldiers, waited patiently by a road in Ypres, Belgium. The German scientists had suggested using chlorine gas against the Allied troops and had recently been given the okay. Over 5,000 cylinders of the gas lay along 4 miles of trenches. Although an array of gases were later implemented, Haber had specific reasons for choosing chlorine as a testing agent.
Here to share with us is science historian Valentina Bellerose. Valentina, thanks for joining us. So, could you provide us with some insight on Haber's choice? Yes, of course. As you stated, Haber was German. Because of their dye industry and the added inexpensive production, chlorine became readily available. Also, it was heavier than oxygen, meaning it had the ability to sink into trenches rather than evaporating and floating away from the intended target. Oh, okay. And what would you say was Haber's #1 reason out of the aforementioned? From a scientific standpoint, the effects of chlorine on its victims. If the concentration was elevated, suffocation could occur, and the purpose of creating new tactics was, of course, to cause more losses on your enemy's side than on your own. I see. And final question, Valentina. Do you see chemical warfare being used again in the future? You can never be too sure, but from my statistical analysis, I would have to say no. The chemical agents actually have a limited killing capacity. In 1916, the Brits reported that only 3% of attacks were fatal, and what's more shocking is the fact that 70% of afflicted men were ready to fight again within 6 weeks. So, no, I don't see it being used in the future. All right. Once again, thank you for joining us. Among chlorine, the list of chemical agents also included tear gas, mustard gas, phosgene, and diphosgene. The list of side effects are plenty, ranging from blisters, sores, temporary and permanent blindness, to lung irritants, eye irritants, and, in rare cases, even death. However, even with these side effects, chemical warfare remains one of the least effective forms of warfare. Because the chemicals were in fact delivered in gas cylinders, usually released from above, the enemy targets had enough time to identify the canisters and protect themselves. The chemical clouds had limited penetration and were only capable of affecting the frontline trenches before dissipating. In the later stages of the war, as the use of chemicals increased, their overall effectiveness did the opposite. The strategic power of chemical weapons lay in the psychological terror they caused rather than the number of soldiers they killed. The pervasive use of these agents of chemical warfare gave rise to an occasionally expressed view of this war as the Chemist's War. Marie Frederick signing off from What We've Innovated. Back to you, Danielle.
Thank you, Marie. That's all the time we have now. I'm your host, Danielle Countryman, and I'll see you next time on the Transit Report.